Yep.
Will the House please come to order? Will the clerk please call and read House Joint Resolution 105?
House Joint Resolution number 105. Resolution expressing sympathy on the death of Faith McMahon, LCO number 4127, introduced by Representative Donovan, Senator Williams, Representative Merrill, Senator Looney, Representative Cafaro, Senator McKinney, Senator Coleman, and Senator Harris. Resolution expressing sympathy on the death of Faith McMahon. Whereas on Tuesday, January 27, 2009, the state of Connecticut and the town of Bloomfield sadly lost one of its state representatives and former mayors with the passing of Faith McMahon at the age of 65. And whereas she was a graduate of Marymount College, Central Connecticut State University, and the University of Massachusetts, and whereas she enjoyed a 35-year career as an elementary school teacher in the town of Windsor, and whereas she served on the Bloomfield Town Council for 15 years, and whereas she was elected as the first female mayor of Bloomfield and proudly served in that capacity for 10 years, and whereas during her time as mayor, she served on many local committees, boards, and commissions, including chair of Bloomfield's Human and Leisure Services Committee and Committee on Committees, as council liaison to Bloomfield's Parks and Recreation Committee, Commission on Aging, Advisory Committee on People with Disabilities, and Library Board, and as a member of Bloomfield's Education Committee, Open Space and Conservation Committee, Community Awareness Task Force, Wintonberry Land Trust, Energy and Environment Committee, and Ladies Auxiliary to the VFW 9992. And whereas she served as president of the Board of Directors of Catholic Charities and as a member of the Capital Area Substance Abuse Council and Central Connecticut State University's Alumni Association's Board of Directors. And whereas she served as a member of the House of Representatives representing the 15th District, which is comprised of Bloomfield and Windsor, from 2003 until the time of her death. And whereas during her years as state representative, she served on various committees, including chairperson of the Select Committee on Children, and as a member of the Joint Standing Committees on Banks, Human Services, and the Judiciary. And whereas during her many years of public service, she received numerous awards, including the Bloomfield High School Patron of the Arts Award, the American Lung Association's Breath of Life Award, the Governor's Prevention Partnership Award, the Working Funds Alliance Certificate of Appreciation, the Governor's Prevention Partnership Outstanding Legislation Award, the Certificate of Special Congressional Recognition, the Bloomfield Future Farmers of America Award, the AARP Connecticut Grandparents Task Force Award, the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association's Legislative Award, and the Connecticut Council of Family Service Agency's Family Champion Award. And whereas she was known as a devoted community servant and a champion for children's rights, and whereas she will always be remembered for her lasting contributions to the state of Connecticut and her incomparable kindness and generosity towards others, and whereas she leaves behind her loving husband, William E. Mahoney, 5 stepchildren, several step-grandchildren, brothers, sisters, nieces, and nephews. Now therefore be it resolved that the Connecticut General Assembly expresses its sincere sympathy and heartfelt condolences on the passing of one of its members, Faith McMahon, whose death is a great loss to the General Assembly, her family and friends, and the people of Windsor, Bloomfield, and the state of Connecticut. Be it further resolved that the Clerk of the House of Representatives cause a copy of this resolution to be presented to the family of Faith McMahon as an expression of the high esteem in which she was held.
Representative Merrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the adoption of the resolution.
Question before the chamber is on the adoption. Will you remark?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been a difficult time for this chamber, and especially when we lose one of our own in mid-session, and especially such a rare and loving person as we all know Faith McMahon to have been. And we wanted to share, I think, some of the stories that all of us have about our experiences and love for Faith with her family, who are here today in the well of the chamber, and I'd like to welcome them here. We have Bill Mahoney, her husband, Gregory McMahon, her brother, Mary Beth Ricketson, her sister, Margaret Kiernan, another sister, Maura Keys, her sister-in-law, Teresa Mahoney, her stepdaughter, and Andrea Riley, her step-granddaughter. If you'd like to stand so we can welcome you to the chamber. Thank you very much for being with us today. And as I said, many of us, I know, in the chamber would like to share some of our memories and thoughts about Faith today, so we will give people an opportunity to speak. We did make some comments a couple of weeks ago, but this is a nice moment for us to all stop and remember our memories of Faith, her positive spirit, and her wonderful, loving heart. And there are many stories and experiences that we all had with Faith. I had an opportunity to meet with the family briefly, and I know that she is just a wonderful, loving family, and she's lucky to have all of you. And I know their memories are very strong and positive of Faith. So with that, I would open the floor to others who might want to comment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Cafaro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill, members of the McMahon family, we, on behalf of this side of the aisle, want to extend our deepest sympathies. We miss Faith terribly. I had an opportunity to speak last time we were in session and share with the chamber some of my thoughts about what a wonderful, beautiful, life-loving, people-loving person she was, and how she, in many respects, lit up this chamber every time she walked in. And one of the ironies is, at this very difficult time in government and in our economy and in this state, the kind of person that you want to go to work with is Faith McMahon, because no matter what the situation, she had an optimistic view, a love of life, and a smile on her face. And boy, do we ever need that now. And for that reason, we miss her terribly. Faith, as was said, was a teacher for 35 years and certainly is a classic example of putting service above self. But also, I think the particular service that she loved the most was the service of children. There's an old saying that never does a person stand so tall as when they bend to help a child. And for many years, the years that I know Faith, in many respects, she was the tallest person around. Our sympathies on this side of the aisle, and God bless you, and our thoughts and prayers are with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Kirkley Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the McMahon family, I too offer my condolences and sympathies at the loss of an extremely wonderful woman. And I think the minority leader hit it on the head when he said that Faith was a breath of fresh air. She always had a beautiful smile, but she was adventurous, and she did things just off the cuff. I had the fun of coming back from Canada with Faith, Joan Lewis, and Claire Janowski. We had gone up there for a trip, and we couldn't take going through customs. So we begged Faith and Joan, Claire and I, to get a ride. So on the way up, she passed this restaurant that sold elk burgers and had an elk farm. And so she insisted that we stop there. So, I mean, being a city girl, Elks don't turn me on. I said, okay, we'll go. So we went, and they're all right to look at, you know. But we go in and we're going to order in the restaurant. And I could not believe she convinced Claire to get an elk burger. Joan and I would not touch them. We ate regular hamburgers. But she kept trying to get us to do it. I mean, we laughed almost the entire 7 hours, and she could put her foot to the pedal. We were times when Claire and I would look at each other and go, Joan, don't you want to drive now? But she just was wonderful. I mean, there's so many things, and she stood for justice. When we took on the fight here on crack and powder cocaine, Faith did not hesitate to talk about the injustice that she felt was there. And she was on the forefront with us. She was on many a show and talked many places to show that this was not an urban issue. This was an issue for all of us in the state of Connecticut to find justice for everyone. And I'll never forget her. And I just wanted to let you know, I love her for many things, but her spirit and her adventurous self, I will never forget, and I will never forget our trip coming back from Canada.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Beth Bai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll say a few words about Faith. One thing I remember in this chamber is she used to sit right over there, and one time late into the night, she had little cards that she'd had made. There were pictures of her dog with the American flag, and she was writing out a card to each of her nieces and nephews and putting $5 in them. And she said, every year I send these out. And I say that because it's just a symbol of what family meant to Faith. And you take family and then you go to the public. So she gives that kind of attention to her family. And then I picture her, sometimes I'd go home, I'd leave the Judiciary Committee meeting, go home, turn it on, and be watching, and I'd wake up at midnight, and I'd look, and there would be the chair, and there would be Faith McMahon. And she would, when someone who'd waited all those hours to testify, she would say something to them every time to say, I know it's a long wait, I'm so glad you came, you're really making a difference. And so I think those two examples show how Faith held her family so close, but how she held every resident of the state of Connecticut who came here and wanted to make a difference. And that really encourages more people to want to come. So I have so much respect for her, and we're really going to miss her. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and my most sincere condolences to Faith's family. I also, I'm sure, bring condolences from Lorraine, one of Faith's dearest friends. Lorraine and I have the distinct honor of living in the same complex in Norwich, and we have shared Faith's stories, stories of all the wonderful things that Faith and Lorraine shared over the years. Certainly over the past few years since I've known Faith, but certainly in the last few months and weeks as we've known that Faith had fallen ill. I had the distinct honor of entering the legislature with Faith. We had a terrible first year. In fact, that year pales in comparison to what we're doing this year. But nonetheless, it was a terrible first year. But through it all, Faith and I had the distinct honor of working together on naming the shad as our state fish. And Faith's enthusiasm and her joy of doing that work for the kids in her district who suggested that legislation. But I'll never forget, after the bill passed and people were so very happy, I think it was the Fish Council, I believe, brought quite honestly, dead shad for us to take pictures with. And there, Faith and I are standing outside the legislative office building in our, business casual or our business clothing, and we're literally standing there holding these, I'm sorry, but really disgusting dead shad, and people are taking pictures of us, and I couldn't help but grimace. But there's Faith smiling away. She was so happy.